Hi, welcome to the first module of Situational Leadership. In this module, we're going to concentrate on sort of an overview of the situational leadership theory, background of how it came about. And we're also going to look at some of the reasons why one would be attracted to this theory. And finally, we're going to look at what your current perceptions are of leadership. Okay, so why do this? Many of you who are taking this course are in CTE schools. Um, and when you look around what your responsibilities are, if you're building level, for example, you're in charge of the faculty, you're in charge of the support staff. If you are on a more district level, it includes even more people, whether we're talking about custodians, bus drivers, even the security people in the building itself. And the responsibilities that you have for all these people and the control that you have in terms of basically being their boss, you have to account for all their different backgrounds, their training, education, readiness for their positions and what they're called upon to do. Situational leadership speaks to the heart of this very situation itself. When you talk about collaboration, which is one of the biggest buzzwords you have out there today, you have to be able to guide that collaboration, and you're going to have to guide that collaboration with people of many different readiness levels. Situational leadership can help you with this. What's your background? Is it general education? You're now in a CTE program school, so it's very different than perhaps what you have been trained on up to this point in your career. Situational leadership is really about leaders taking the group that they're leading and collaborating with and bringing them to a higher and better place in terms of what they have to accomplish. Another thing that's important, you will soon figure out when you look around your school, is that no singular outlook, talent, preparation is out there among the groups you have to work with. So essentially, one size or approach with many different groups is going to fit no one. The other thing that I found curious in the last few years, and you may have experienced this in your own programs of preparation for administration and leadership, is that there's been this incredible sort of siloing of the idea of leadership and the idea of management. Leadership is put up on a high pedestal as being sort of like the beacon, if you will, of what everybody should be, and the managerial is more like the blue collar, nose to the grindstone group down there. Well, after 39 plus years in education, I'm here to tell you that leadership's important. Make no mistake about it. But if you can't manage it and can't manage the variables in there, you're going nowhere. So, I mean, you could be the world's best leader in the world, but if you have deficiencies in how to manage the people you're responsible for and the things that you're in charge of doing, you're not going to go anywhere, and neither is your school. And finally, one bit of advice that I always give out to my students, because I found it so simple and so helpful, is Dr. John Collins, who was my professor and my dissertation advisor at Seton Hall University, summed it up very eloquently. You don't know what you don't know. And in this course, of course, we're going to teach you something that perhaps you haven't thought about or haven't looked at before. And that is what we're talking about in terms of leadership styles itself. So, where did this situational leadership come from? Paul Hershey and Ken Blanchard developed the idea of situational leadership in 1969. Their work was called The Life Cycle Theory of Leadership, where it came from. And like all authors and people who write things, the one universal thing we know is that people have a complete inability for a completely original thought. Our advances and everything else are based on things that we already know that we either reassemble in different ways or we get inspired to take bits and pieces and make it fit a need that we have right now. So what was going on in 68 and 69 in the United States? Well, up to this point in the post-World War II era in the 50s and 60s, the United States was an economic machine. We were basically the only country not physically damaged by World War II. Our economy was shifting from wartime to peacetime, and our factories were up and running and didn't have to be rebuilt after bombings and everything else. And we had adopted what managers had a very efficient style. I'm the boss, everything is top down. We decide what it is, you do it. Basically, think of it as an extension of the Industrial Revolution, and the people became the widgets. And that's how the management system was actually designed. As we go through the 68 and 69, what do we see in the United States? We go to the moon. Young people are expressing themselves with music festivals and calling out that they want their place, basically in the universe. We have much social unrest, whether we're talking about the war movement, whether we're talking about gender issues, whether we're talking about social justice issues. Um, and we had people basically marching on the right, on the left. You had the idea of the moral majority coming up. You had the reaction with the student unions and the student protests. And of course, we had the Beatles. When you look at 2020 to 2022, what do you see? Well, we see that we're thinking about going to the moon again. We see young people trying to express their feelings on what the world should be. We see the United States broken apart in different levels of advocacy. We see social justice issues at the forefront, and we see Paul McCartney touring again. I'm glad Paul McCartney is touring again. But my point is that this is a very apropos theory to look at, as it came out of the same sort of similar things that were going on. And again, we can use it to sort of bring things forward. Hershey and Blanchard, these quotes here basically sum up their idea of leadership flexibility, and that we have to relook at how we're getting groups of people are. I mean, this is the beginnings of, in the education world, we're taught to take students where they are and bring them to higher levels. Well, Hershey and Blanchard are basically suggesting the same thing here, that effective leaders need to sort of recognize that these are people and not widgets, and that we have to be not only caretakers, but we have to understand that if we're going to get value out of what they are doing, we have to recognize who they are and his talents. If you really think about it, what they're really discussing here is the age-old argument of positional power versus personal power. Now, positional power has a lot to do with that top-down style of management that I just said was very popular during post-World War II and through the 60s. And positional power, personal power, is more of the person coming out of that, you understand who I am because of my position, to look, I've got something of value here that I can help you with and bring you forward. Okay. If you really think about it, a lot of the groundwork for Goleman's work on emotional EQ can be found in this sort of approach. One thing I'm going to call your attention to is that you'll see once in a while in the slide deck in the presentation here, this symbol. What this symbol indicates is that, sorry about that. We'll go back one. That symbol indicates if you click on it, it'll bring you to a resource. In this case, it is going to bring you to a paper that talks about that very dynamic. Okay, you'll see it on the platform as for further reading and investigation. Okay, so what you need to do at this point is this video will end. Okay, and what we need you to do then is turn on the next video, which will give you an overview of what situational leadership is. And in that way, hopefully, you'll begin to get an appreciation of the theory itself, the idea of the flexibility. And what we want you to do in the activity is do sort of a questionnaire of yourself and sort of identify your leadership traits. And we want you then to extend that to other people to see if their perception of what you think your leadership trait is, if it matches up. This will help develop a reference point for you as you learn more and more about different leadership styles and what sort of supports they can give the groups of people that they are working with. Okay, thank you.